all these clips is that a lot of these athletes have developed a good buffer system with regards to dealing with lactic acid. And the last one, he was a rower. Oh, well, he's not a rower. I used to be a rower. So if we had him in a boat, he would actually sink us. We'd be pulling him along as well. But you saw in the end, even at 12.8 seconds, obviously he was out of breath. So the main thing about with lactic acid is, I mean, we used to think a long time ago that lactic acid is the reason why we have sore muscles, and we know that's no longer true. It's DOMS, and we're going to talk more about that lately. But the whole thing behind lactic acid is to take glucose and turn it into that molecule right here, which is known as pyruvate. And then this actually gets put into the aerobic cycle, which is called the Krebs cycle. So, and the thing that the body does is it actually tries to maximize the use of oxygen as the energy, as a source of energy, as opposed to the anaerobic, because with one molecule of pyruvate, you end up with 18 ATP if you went through the whole Krebs cycle. And this is our fuel right here. This is what causes our muscles to contract. However, when you actually get to the point where you're beyond, how do you say, you're no longer into aerobic, but you're into your anaerobic system, then the lactic acid is, so then the pyruvate turns into lactate or lactic acid. And the thing that limits a lot of these athletes and causes that burning sensation is this, the hydrogen proton itself. So it actually makes the system acidic. So I just put this little diagram down here to show you guys the aerobic and the anaerobic. And as you can see, in the aerobic system, you're able to carry on because the pyruvate uses the oxygen and it continues to turn into ATP. But as soon as we start getting into the anaerobic, we basically now are creating more hydrogen protons, and those are the hydrogen protons are what causes us to have that pain. Incidentally, what's interesting about the hydrogen protons is that the body has developed the system as a fail-safe system to protect us from creating more damage. So this is why we shut down after a race, or we can't really go to the extreme exertion, because what happens is that the hydrogen ions themselves, they actually compete on this. Let me show you the next diagram, which is here. By the way, this is my diagram. I'm a medical illustrator as well. So, but so what you see here is you have the sarcomere, which is your muscle cell. And this is your thick filament. This is your thin filament. So what hydrogen ions do is they compete up here on the thin filament, preventing these heads from attaching to the thin filament and causing contraction. So from a muscle point of view, i.e. Our legs, what we use for running, what the body tries to do then is it actually tries to buffer the hydrogen ions, but when it doesn't, it actually starts shutting down. We get the pain. Interestingly enough, and here's the thing about lactic acid, for the longest time we thought that it was a waste product. It actually is not.
Wow.
Lactic acid, or lactate, when I was back at university many centuries ago, we actually heard of a thing called lactic acid anaerobiosis, which was a term, and it was actually proposed by a guy named Brooks in California. And what he proposed was that lactic acid actually is a fuel. So, and when you look at endurance athletes, high endurance athletes like rowers or cyclists, they actually, I think they reach a threshold where the anaerobic and the aerobic threshold, and that's just a term that's been thrown out for years, but that they're walking a very fine line, that they start using a lot of the lactic acid as fuel. And there was a rower in Canada named Silken Laumann, who is a phenomenal rower. And when we did some testings, or when some testings have been done on her, rather than continuing to see an increase in the lactic acid continuing, it actually dropped the other way. And what that showed us is that it was being used as fuel. But interestingly enough, we also have another muscle. We have our skeletal muscle and we have our cardiac muscle. Lactic acid by the heart is used as a fuel to continue to fuel it at maximal performance.
And Nico, but from physiology's terms, isn't it lactate that's used, and that's what we're talking about?
Or lactate, sorry. But lactic acid and lactate
disassociates immediately into the hydrogen ions and lactate.
Yeah, you're right. Sorry, I've been corrected, but that's good. But the lactate is actually used as a fuel. But when the body starts cooling down, or when the body is actually starting to recover, the oxygen system kicks in again. So then the lactate gets reverted back to pyruvate. So it's a very interesting thing that, I mean, for the longest time, even I thought that it was a waste product, but it's not. It's actually a fuel, which can be used to actually help athletes. So athletes that have been involved with a lot of endurance sports for over the years, they actually have developed a system where they utilize the lactate, which is very, very important. Now, the difference between this and DOMS is that delayed onset muscle soreness is an inflammatory response. And this person here got injured through eccentric exercise. You can see he blew his hamstring muscles. And the thing is, he's following the exact same thing. The exact same thing that we've been known for years, is that inflammation is heat and redness and swelling and pain and loss of function. And this is what DOMS, this is what athletes experience when they've done something for the very first time after they've taken a long rest, and they do a new form of activity that they haven't been used to as well. And what you're doing is you're actually causing an inflammatory response. So the question, the idea that lactic acid a long time ago was the reason why we were feeling sorenesses after, a day or two is not right. It's actually the breakdown of muscle tissue. Interestingly enough, lactate actually gets dissipated in the body within about 30 to 40 minutes of cessation of exercise itself. But it's the so when the person is running and they're exerting themselves to maximally, it's the fact that the whole system becomes acidic. Here's an interesting fact about the body. When it becomes acidic, it actually stops the muscle contraction. But tumor cells love acid. So when you're looking at a tumor cell and it's growing, and it's still using pyruvate, which actually gets converted into lactate, and the hydrogen ions, that is what helps the tumor survive and thrive, which I find very, 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 very interesting. So now, what is DOMS? Well, this is your muscle cells. And what I want you guys to focus on is this thing called calpain-3. So when we actually cause damage, what we're doing is we're actually breaking down the muscle cells itself, and you'll get a better view of what I'm talking about. So what you see here is a muscle cell, and this thing here is the Z line, which is right here. And the Z line is where all the main proteins of the muscle cell are stored to help with contraction. And right here is the M line. So this thing here is the M line. And what you're seeing in between is what we call the thick filament and the thin filament, and this causes the contraction itself. Now, when you cause damage, what you're doing is you're breaking down all this organization that you see here, and the culprit is this thing called calpain. Calpain is a calcium protease, which basically means that when the system is broken down, there's a big release of calcium in the body itself, which causes disorganization. And the calpains themselves, what they do is they actually break down, further break down the system here, and then they release these little chemicals that causes the inflammatory response. But they're also responsible for causing the streaming. So as you can see, the organization has left the muscle cells themselves. You're not seeing nice organized Z lines and M lines, but you see here the streaming. So this is inflammation. This is DOMS. And there's a big difference. So I wanted to sort of bring this lecture out here to show you guys that no longer can you say lactate or lactic acid are responsible for causing us to have pain further down, 2 or 3 days post. It's all an inflammatory response, which is what we talked about before, which is the pro-inflammatory cytokines and all this. Any questions so far? Nope. Okay.
It also, the immediate, like the 400 meter, 800 meter, the tying up, running the hard, intense, anaerobic, intervals, things like that. That's not the lactic acid or the lactates either. That's probably the increased acidosis.
It's the hydrogen protons. It's the hydrogen protons. That's what causes the increase in acidity in the body, because what happens is the pH changes. And it's like I said earlier on, Richie, it's the hydrogen ions that prevent the binding from happening here, which affects the contraction. And in order for you to basically reverse that, this is why you're forced to rest after a maximal exertion, because now your body is dying for oxygen. Let's just use this metaphor. So it's the oxygen that has to come into the system to take the lactate and reverse it and turn it back into pyruvate. But it's actually the acidosis or the increase in hydrogen ions that basically prevent the athlete from, continuing their maximum performance. And as I said before, it's actually a fail-safe system to prevent further damage from actually happening.
There's also the nervous system breakdown too, and somebody's got a loss of coordination and
definitely. And that's
those kind of intense activities, you got the double whammy of that, which everybody used to call lactic acid.
Exactly.
Doesn't feel very good.
No. And then you saw when we saw the 400. Remember when we saw the 400 meter distance runners, and you saw the 400 not the South African, but the other two behind them, how they just basically died, like they didn't have any juice in their bodies, but their lactic acid was not the lactic acid, but the hydrogen protons were through the roof. Interestingly enough, when I was a rower, we used to have this machine called a Jessing, which was a rowing erg. It no longer exists, but we used to do something really stupid. Is we used to take simethicone, which was a buffer, an acid buffer, and we thought that if we took that would actually help us buffer the increase in the hydrogen ions. Or back then we didn't call them hydrogen ions. We just saw lactic or lactic acid. And what happens with that is it actually has a adverse reaction, which actually builds up more gas in your stomach as well. So,
which used to take bicarbonate of soda in Great Britain.
Yes.
For the same reason, bicarbonate of soda, the baking agent. That used to upset the stomach as well.
Oh, exactly. Yeah. Exactly. But I mean, athletes have been always trying to figure out ways to beat the system.
Yeah.
I mean, you saw that
the system is to run the 400 in under 43 seconds.
Yeah.
Then you don't get as much buildup. That's the whole key.
Yeah.
Yeah. But you saw that lady from Czechoslovakia.
Go faster.
What lady?
What lady? Exactly.
There was a girl from Australia that was a really good 400 meter runner that I'd run against. And she would always have menthol cough drops before she races.
Really?
And I didn't understand it. And then I'm like, oh, whatever works.
Well, I mean, again, it's whatever works. And this is the thing with athletes. Athletes are so superstitious.
Yeah.
They are.
Yeah.
So the key then is, what is the key? Where do we go from here? What have we developed in order to
I know.
crystal ball?
I know.
Like a Moody Blues album cover.
Yeah. Kelly Moody Blues is an old blues band. Well, rock blues.
Rock and roll.
Rock
Might
and
have to
roll
Google
blues.
that one.
They started off as a blues band.
There you go. Nights in White Satin and what is it, Tuesday Afternoon or something like this?
Nights in White Satin only hit the hat 7 times over.
I wasn't going to say Monday,
Monday.
Monday.
No.
That's the mamas and the papas.
Can I ask a question, Nico?
Yo.
You said endurance athletes can use the lactate as a fuel. At
Yes.
what percentage of effort or maximal would that occur?
That's a very good question. I remember when I was a rower that we actually used to do lactate, well, actually we did lactates. We did, what do you call those things? Strips. We used to use strips to see our acid level. And
Oh, yeah.
yeah, remember those litmus,
Yeah.
those little strips? Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And we were actually, it's hard to believe, but I mean, we were up to 80, close to 80% of our max VO2, and we were still pushing it and recovering quickly. So, but the thing is, it takes years and years and years of training to be able to develop that system to the point where it actually becomes a major fuel source. But as I said earlier on, the lactate itself also is used by the heart. So it's kind of an interesting thing that in our working muscles, i.e. our legs, that the H plus, the hydrogen proton, gets to the point where it actually prevents us from continuing to train. But we need that lactate in our heart to be able to maximally perform, because the heart's beating at phenomenal paces. So when I was a rower, they had me hooked up onto a heart rate monitor, and I was on the Jessing machine, and I kid you not, my heart rate was 230 beats.
Whoa.
Wow. That basically is one open chamber. Doesn't even shut down, you know? So, I mean, I could have had a heart attack if I pushed it, but the heart basically was using all that fuel to how do you say, function at that high capacity. But getting back to, with regards to what have we developed in the ways of dealing with lactic acid or lactate, and so we mentioned the buffers things, but you can use, or what has been used in the past has been, how do you say, Advil, ibuprofen and all this. But all that does is it basically helps with the soreness that you may feel, let's say, after you've had a long or a hard workout. But with DOMS, this is where a lot of the science has gone into from an anti-inflammatory point of view. And some of the stuff that we've used in the past have been, you know, lactic, ice. So I use the iceberg there. But Advil and Aleve are the other two. And then you can see this one here with the needles of steroids. So Advil and Aleve are very interesting. And the problem is that they're overprescribed, overused, especially in sports.
Yeah.
When I was working in the NBA, the athletes themselves would actually ingest a dispenser cup full of NSAIDs, non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs, just before they'd get on the court to practice or even get on the court to play. The thing is, these things here, Advil and Aleve, they actually block a enzyme called cyclooxygenase. And what that enzyme does is it actually sends a signal to the cells that we've got to basically deal with inflammation. But so they're blocking that thing. The interesting thing about these two products, Advil, if taken to excess, so the ibuprofen and Advil, if taken to excess, and I mean, you know, everyday use 3 or 4 times or 2 or 3 times a day for a long length of time, it's been shown to actually affect the kidneys. So you've got to be very, very careful. And the other thing too is both Advil and Aleve, they actually affect protein synthesis. So they will prevent the body from repairing itself properly. Wow. Now, so that's the ibuprofen affects the kidneys. Aleve, which is a naproxen, actually affects the liver. Wow. And naproxen used at a very, very high dose. I mean, we're talking like thousands of milligrams, actually can shut down the liver. So this is the one thing that you have to be very careful of. And then the other thing that we use for anti-inflammatory stuff is the steroids, you know. So what the steroids are doing is they become an immunosuppressant thing. So they're basically trying to prevent the pro-inflammatory cytokines that we talked about earlier on from expressing themselves. So this is where we're at with the science with regards to, we use ice. And I mean, Merkele has gone on to say that he made a mistake suggesting that by using ice, you are affecting the inflammatory response and you're preventing it from doing what it's supposed to do. So he's retracted that statement. And it's still used a lot with regards to rice. A lot of people still use ice as a way of dealing with inflammation. But the thing is, it can have an adverse effect with regards to helping the body do what it needs to do to recover properly by affecting the inflammatory response itself. So,
2 questions.
Yes.
Well, one question really, because I think we talked about the other one a couple weeks ago.
Mhm.
So acetaminophen basically just helps block pain, but it doesn't do anything for inflammation.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's why acetaminophen is safer to take, but it's not really the inflammation, it's just blocking the pain. Or does acetaminophen have long-term effects too?
That I don't know. I don't have the answer to that one. But I mean, a lot of these things like Advil and Aleve, all they're doing is they're just sort of trying to block the pain, you know. But the thing is, what they're also doing is they're blocking that enzyme from causing the, how do you say, the release of the inflammatory response, which is so, I mean, hey, I know a lot of athletes use it, so believe it, but the problem then is if you take too much of it, you're actually affecting the system somewhere else, you know, which is very,
we
very
did
important.
talk about this 2 or 3 weeks ago, I think, that, you know, the ice for just help with it, like a day later, after you've done recovery and movement, something like that may help with flushing, but it's not shutting down that system right when it happens or an hour after it happens. So you've already had a day or 2 to recover.
Sure, but I mean, what we talked about back then is it's probably more important to introduce heat than it is to introduce cold. The only thing that I can see ice to be used that properly is if you could actually do like a contrast, because that way the most important thing is to continue the blood circulation. So when you're doing a contrast thing between hot and cold, you're actually helping pump the blood back towards the heart, because it's that contraction that is the venal return or the venous return to the heart. So that's the one thing that I could see using ice with heat as a contrast bath sort of idea to help with recovery.
So there's no real benefit of if you're in the ice, like let's say a day later, you're in the ice bath or icing a ankle and foot, you take it out. Once the blood completely rushes back in, there's not any effect or that. Obviously, it's not the same as contrast, but.
Yeah, I mean, to me, again, it all boils down to what the athlete feels that they need to do as well, Richie. I mean, we touched
I'm talking about
that.
not from a mental point of view. I'm talking about like physiologically.
Well,
I mean, I understand like it's opening and closing and the blood going in and out on contrast, but when you ice bath or put a foot in a bucket of ice, something like that, and then you take it out and naturally more blood rushes back in, brings that heat in, that doesn't really have any effect unless you do a contrast.
Yeah, because I mean, all you're doing is you're causing an ischemic reaction, and then you're allowing the heat to basically bring the blood rush back into the system itself. So, I mean, I couldn't really answer that question with regards, do you want to use ice? Well, from a damage point of view, the answer would be no. Why? Because it's about 24 to 48 hours later that you actually bring in those inflammatory proteins, the neutrophils, as we said. Remember, when you have muscle damage in the system, you actually have to clear up all the dead debris. And what the body does is it brings in the first clearing system is called the neutrophils. And what the neutrophils do is they're the Pac-Men. So they start eating up all the dead cells, all the tissues in that area. And they basically balloon. And so they get full. And then the body then brings what are known as the macrophages. So macro means big eaters. And they come in and they start eating up the neutrophils. So Richie, if we look at it from a physiological point of view, I don't think that even 24 hours post you should use ice, because the neutrophils are in there doing their job as well.
Even you shouldn't even use contrast then too. Then
no, contrast is earlier on.
Oh well, okay.
Yeah.
So you're doing it before that the neutrophils start up. So there's kind
exactly, because it's 24 to 48 hours is when the neutrophils come in. Yeah. But the thing is, again, so what's interesting about, and Rich is the person who brought this topic up, guys. So, and I wanted to do more research on it, but, and I find very fascinating, because I used to say that we want to flush out the lactic acid, and,
Right.
and I've been proven wrong. It's just basically, it's not the flushing out of the lactic acid. It's actually the conversion of the lactate back into pyruvate, and then the pyruvate is used with the oxygen to basically be able to provide the energy source. So one thing is, I don't think we could use the term flushing out lactic acid anymore. What we should be saying is that by us decreasing, so after we finish an exerted run, and we're sort of slowing down our pace, what we're actually doing is then we're allowing the lactate to turn back into pyruvate. And then now that we have ample amount of oxygen in the system, then that oxygen is which is used to take the pyruvate and put it through that, what is called the Krebs cycle. That itself is what is providing the energy. So it's not a removal of lactic acid, it's just a reconversion of lactate back to pyruvate, and with the oxygen being present, then we can say that's probably one of the best things to do after an activity, is the fact that you've got, like the warm down runs and all this. That's the most important thing, I think, to say. So it's not flushing out lactic acid anymore.
Another question then about the buffering of the hydrogen ions and things.
Right.
A warm down afterwards, or recovery when you slowed the pace down, but you're still moving, that should help with that. It can catch up in the buffering of that as well.
Probably.
Recovery.
Probably. I mean, the thing is, you're basically trying to minimize the amount of hydrogen ions in the system, which are increased immensely because you're not doing it in an aerobic with use of oxygen itself.
So when you do an aerobic recovery or an aerobic movement later, that helps both. Helps the
buffering, but more it's not more like buffering, Richie. It's more like the oxygen, the hydrogen is being there's a reuptake of the hydrogen itself, which basically leads to the lactate, and then the lactate itself converts back to pyruvate. So you're doing a reverse of the system with the.
So you're helping the acidity. You're reducing the acidity.
Exactly.
Good warm down. That's what I meant, really. Yeah. So.
Yeah, exactly, and that's what you are doing.
It's the same thing. It's just the semantics of what's actually happening are different. Well, they're not
exactly.
Different. They've just been said so incorrectly for so long that it confuses people.
And I'll be the first one to say that. I used to say we're flushing out the lactic acid. No, we're not doing anything of the sort.
I asked Vince Anderson about this because remember, hey, Richie, remember I did that mentor program for the Olympic trials in 2015 with Vince? Yeah, you helped organize that.
Who are you with?
Vince Anderson.
Oh, you're with Vince. Okay. Yeah.
And I asked, or I saw their little cards they gave to everybody and what they had to do after their event. And it wasn't like a warm down lap, what we've all been brought up to know. It was 60 meter, like 50 meters of a stride at 60% and do 4 of those. And I'm like, oh, okay, that kind of makes sense, because when you're jogging, you know, you're not extending the muscles if you're trying to, you know, whatever, quote unquote, get rid of the lactic acid or whatever you're trying to do after it as a warm down. And then this last year, and then that's what I kept doing for my warm downs, and that's how I coached with kids and stuff. And then last year, I was at, what was that? Oh, a level 3 at down in Florida. That was interesting. That IMG Academy. That's kind of cool to see. But anyway, Andreas was there, who has always been underneath and trained with Vince Anderson, you know, and now he's doing his own coaching. But anyway, so I said to Andreas, I said, yeah, Andreas, in a warm down, it's like some 60 meter or some strides at 60%, right? And he goes, no. I'm like, what? Because that's what Vince said like a while back. He goes, no, what we're doing now is we're not even doing really a warm down type of thing. And I said, what? So I don't know. I don't know what's the new thing.
but Joy, I mean, lactic acid dissipates out of the body naturally.
Yeah, exactly.
So, I mean, the only good thing about doing a nice aerobic warm down is you're basically sort of allowing the muscles to move through the range of motion and trying to take as much what's the word I'm thinking of, tension out of the system, so that way you can begin you have a proper cool down.
This is the way we describe it to them, and this is nothing new, and this is nothing I came up with, because it's been around, but it's not the prevailing.
I have to see you guys.
I can't jog and stuff.
I can't see you guys. There we go.
Stretching stuff. But you know, the notion of an active dynamic warm up, starting off lightly, getting more progressive, catering it to the movement of that day. If you're doing real explosive stuff, if you're not doing something that explosive, you don't have to get that explosive at the end of the warm, but catering to that, you do the training, and then once you're done, you kind of reverse it. You reverse the dynamic movement from not obviously all out, but like 60-70% motions. And like if we do a 30-40 meter active jogging, skipping, mobility stuff, accelerations, high speed sprint drills, then we train. Then at the end, we go back to doing, you know, maybe 50 meters across the grass, sometimes barefoot. The kids can handle it. Doing relaxed skipping. And we're not talking about technical skipping. Doing, you know, walks, reaching the ground, doing active dynamic stuff, getting them moving, and then slowing it down as they're going, and then ending up with any kind of, you know, other mobility exercises and things they need at the end. So it's like you take something and you warm it up, both heat-wise, muscularly, neurologically, get it firing to where it's supposed to be. It fires and does its work, and then you kind of, you know, ramp it back down a similar way.
Yeah, but the thing you have to keep in mind is actually you've got that fatigue factor in the body after the workout. So it's we're not talking about you finish it and 2 minutes later you're doing 150 meter repeats at 90%. We're talking about 50 meters across the grass. We're talking about, for my kids, after I peel some of them up from the grass because they want to lay there. And part of mine is, I get to the kids level 2. They do really intense workouts. They feel nauseous and lightheaded because the blood's pooled in arms and legs. The acidosis is affecting the stomach. The head is light because the blood pooling, and they want to lay there and they feel worse, and then they throw up or they get, you know, it's like, get up and move. Get the heart rate back up, not to 190 or 200, but get the heart rate back up to 130, 140, and move around. Literally recirculate the blood everywhere and start resynthesizing some of the energy and move the muscles. And then, you know, so really in an intense workout, it starts off a little more slowly, gets a little better, and then gradually slows back down. So yeah, we're not having them do anything intense or anything. The thing that causes a lot of athletes to vomit is the spike in hydrogen ions.
Right.
That's it. So it's, the body's gone so acidic that, and because you've got all of the acid in your system, because the hydrochloric acid in your stomach, you actually vomit to get rid of as much of that hydrogen ion as possible.
How would they have it in the first place? Oh, sorry, Alan.
Because they part of that faster warm down of doing the strides, we call it 60 to 70% strides over about 50, 60 metres. You all heard of a coach called Tommy Boyle? Used to coach Tommy Keane and Yvonne Murray. Tommy was doing this probably about 89, 90. And the main reason he did it, as we all said, running with lactate, doing 400 metre training, 800 metre training is horrible. And the last thing you want the kids, or even an experienced athlete, is remembering running with a fresh freezer on their back. So you have them running nice and fluid, just so that they remember running free. So the next time they come to training, subconsciously, they're running free again. That's one of the main reasons he did it that way.
The other thing you got to also realize is because you're actually putting you're putting your system in a lot of tension, and your muscles are contracting, that you need to be able to allow them to move through a full range of motion. So this is why I think what's important with those rundowns is in track and field is to continue trying to get that stride length, because that stride length has been diminished because of the extreme workout itself, which is very, very important.
Yeah.
Jimson, what do you say?
Okay, so my take with lactic acid or lactate. Okay, so I did research at McGill back in the mid 80s and in my undergrad. And I hate to tell this story because I sound like an evil doctor, but we took rats and we took a little treadmill and we made the rats run to exhaustion, and we injected C14 lactic acid. Like carbon 12 is neutral. So we injected C14 into the rats after they got to exhaustion. And then we measured everything from that rat after, from the blood and all the fluids. Guess where the C14 went to at the end
The heart?
of the day?
The heart?
Nope.
Stomach.
Nope.
Liver?
The legs.
CO2, carbon dioxide.
Really?
Carbon dioxide, C14
Into the lungs.
-O2 was 80 or 70% of the injection that we put into the rats. And so that to me makes me believe that the most important thing after a 400 or 800 is to move. You got to get moving. You got to get oxygen in and CO2 out. So whatever you want to do, if you want to jog lightly, great. If you want to do 6 times 60 on a grass, great. What I started doing is doing some barefoot runs. After my workout, I do 1 lap barefoot for proprioception.
Right.
I do 1 lap and then making sure there's no glass and bottle caps. So that's my take. I don't know, maybe I'm old school, maybe I'm stuck in that research, but I really believe that the CO2 is where the lactic acid goes, even though lactic is the H+ ions. But I really think to get rid of lactic acid, you just got to get breathing.
Well, and that's what the research says, because once your body cools down, now instead of it being in the anaerobic phase, there's a more supply of oxygen in the system. So that way the lactic acid gets converted back to pyruvate. And then because there's oxygen in the system, then the pyruvate goes through the Krebs cycle. And this is what they're saying.
Yeah, and it's no different. Like you see hockey players after the game, you see them on stationary bikes in the dressing room.
That started with me in 1994. It did. Seriously.
Good job.
Little plug-in for Nikos there, but yeah. So I think whatever works for everybody. I would love to get a massage. I'd love to have a 90-minute massage on the table at my home for clearing out lactic acid, lactate, acidosis, H+ ions, whatever you want to call it. But it's whatever works for you guys, and just stick to it and try to keep consistent. But I like the jogging method. I like the 1 lap jog. I like a couple of strides. I like being barefoot. That's it.
And barefoot's good, because the other thing too is by being barefoot, you're actually dropping your heel, especially in the grass, you're dropping the heel just slightly lower than you would in a shoe, which then actually causes more of a stretch in the Achilles tendon, which is a good thing to do, especially in sprinters, because I'm not a sprinter. I was a rower and a track cyclist, but from a sprinter's point of view, it's more of a pawing action, and you're landing on what, mid to front of your foot, correct?
It's not a pawing action.
Huh?
It's not a pawing action. That's called a lifetime of hamstring issues.
Okay.
Because somebody said 30 years ago you paw.
Okay.
Yeah.
What happens is when your knee, if you stand up, I can't do it now because my lovely wife made me popcorn, but the whole bit is.
Thanks for sharing, Richie.
Malcolm, Tim, correct me if I'm wrong here, even Joy, but the goal of velocity for a sprinter is to maximize stride length, not by reaching, but by putting more force on the ground,
Yep.
produce more force, and maximize turnover.
Okay.
So if you block the knee, reach your foot out intentionally, and then try to reach back to grab the ground, you've done like an extra action.
Okay.
You're going to land with your foot in front of your body. Your hamstrings are made to push, not to pull. And you strain hamstrings like crazy. If the least, you slow down because you're towing in front of you. And it happens naturally because when let's say this is your thigh, the thigh, basically it comes in. When it stops, this kind of casts out naturally anyway when you're going down. So if you drive the hip up and the hip down, it casts out a little bit, comes down right underneath you. But if you try to reach it out, you slow down the recovery, you end up in front of you, you put a strain on the hamstrings to make hamstrings do what they're not supposed to do. Because speed dynamics, because one person I know really well and another who I didn't know really well created a system and videos and movies. Malcolm knows what I'm talking about. And that became the thing, like the ACE, the C drill, the reaching, pawing
A,
drill.
B's, and C's.
Yeah, I thought that was
Part
another,
of it.
But
he admitted
That was
years
okay.
ago that's like, that really doesn't happen.
But
That-
doesn't a sprinter put a lot more stress on their calves?
Because they should be landing slightly dorsiflex with the heel up, as you're saying.
Yeah. So what I'm
Not
saying
all
is
people
that
sprinters,
You get
say
that
the last
extra
row of
stretch from the
spikes.
gastroc through the Achilles. That's where you get a lot of the energy. Yeah.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is the good thing about running barefoot after a
warm down,
sprint workout in the warm down is now you're allowing the heel to drop a little further than you would because of the workout itself, which actually lengthens the Achilles tendon, which actually helps with increasing ranges of motion.
I thought you said something about sprinters paw.
No, it's just for the warm
No,
down.
I meant this thing, like when they're.
Okay, because if you say pawing to a sprinter or a sprint coach, they think you're supposed to reach your foot out.
Hey,
and then
listen,
pull it
yeah.
back.
Yeah.
and
Yes.
what Rich is talking about is taken care of by the propulsion and the speed of the heel recovery. It
Right.
takes care of all of that cycle.
Right.
Like
And
you
Richie,
said,
to jump on what Richie was saying, that misconception was even put in by the biomechanic people at Mondo. And
Okay.
if you look for about 5 or 6 years, Mondo built tracks. I don't know if you know how they're built, but they have like a honeycomb underneath.
Really?
They built those honeycombs at angles for several years because of that misconception of pawing. And then they now have reconfigured those to be straight up and down.
Vertical.
Right. So that was a whole misconception in the track world, and 90% of the track coaches still are there. If they don't come to somebody like this to learn, they
My
still do.
apologies, because when Tim and Malcolm, when you hear someone say pawing for sprinters, it means something totally different than what you're
Right.
saying.
yeah, I think they're seeing the result of and calling it something else. Again, if you've got that speed of the heel recovery and you've got that slight dorsiflexion at the point of landing, that is probably what it looks like. I mean, particularly when you look at stuff in slow motion, and of course, now these
Also,
days we have all the emphasis on front side mechanics.
When in the front side, that thigh comes to a stop, the lower, it's like a lever. If you had a piece of wood and another piece of wood on it with a hinge, if I flipped this piece of wood up and stopped it, this would hinge out.
Yeah.
Right.
That's what's
Exactly.
happening up there naturally. But then when you
Yeah.
drive this down, it comes back underneath you. But
Yeah.
if you, as you've heard Tim knows and other coaches say, oh, you have to cast that foot out far and then try to bring it back. No, it happens anyway, so why slow it down and make it worse and risk?
No, definitely. So let's, Kelly's got a question here. So what is the pain that athletes feel? You want to expand on that, Kelly?
Sorry. Yeah, so when we're doing like a prowler session or something, like, you know, pushing the sled, and then the hydrogen ions hit 10 seconds in or whatever, and then your muscles just cannot they cannot contract as hard. So I understand that part, and with what you've explained, but then what is the actual pain that athletes feel when they try and contract harder and it just hurts?
You mean after they've done it, or while they're still doing the action itself?
Yeah, while they're still doing it. Like if you were to do, like, you know, some heavy bicep curls and you got to rep 12 and it just hurts, and it's just like, I can't do any more.
But as soon as they stop, then they feel better. Yeah, that pain is the actually acidosis that Richie was commenting on. It's
so
the
hydrogen ions that cause the whole system to be more acidic. It actually hurts, but how?
Because you have I mean, it's not inflammation, but it feels like, I mean, when you're pumped, what is
That's a good question. I mean, I couldn't answer that one right now. It'd be something to do some research on.
Next
but
week. Have the answer for you.
Actually, next week, Kelly will have the answer. But no, it's the hydrogen ions itself that's causing the acidosis, and it could be the change in pH of the muscle itself, and that change in pH may be the reason why they feel sore. Remember, I showed you the last clip of that big guy, Brian Shaw, whatever he was. He only did
18 strokes.
Is what?
He only did 18 strokes. I counted them as he done them.
That's crazy. I mean, that's phenomenal. Strokes. But you saw, as you saw when he got off, he was actually huffing and puffing like crazy, trying to catch his breath, even though it was 12.8 seconds. But he went to maximal exertion, and that's probably because of the fact that it was the anaerobic system that is kicking in. It was more like the creatine phosphate more than anything. And then it could have been the fact that there was an increase in the hydrogen ions themselves that made the system acidic. And it could be the fact that the system is acidic that the athletes feel the pain and the soreness.
Kelly, are you talking about the pain that when you feel like if you're doing curls, like the literally pumping up in pain?
Yeah,
but okay.
But it's
like, I was going to say, if you're feeling like pain and it's not from this like pumping up, that maybe that it's just too darn heavy and your body is saying do not lift that much. But it sounds like we're sure wrong. That's what Nico's saying.
Well, I put down in my notes the pain of the pump. Like, what is that pain of the pump?
That's it. Yeah, that's it. Or if you're running at a steady pace and then you try and go faster and faster, and it just hurts the muscles, like, and it's not pain.
That's called age.
No, Joyce says no, so forget that one.
And that's why I wanted to ask Jimson about this, because all of his speed endurance stuff that he researched and reads, and I know he probably understands this the most. I mean, so we do as coaches, but that's his event, the 400. So, you know, I know he's tried to figure out what's the best. I mean.
So as we've hovered back to the 400.
Yes.
Wait a minute, I don't think we finished Kelly's question yet.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's the pain though too.
That's the pain. Okay. Kelly, this is part number 2. Jimson, take over.
Ready.
What was your question about? What was the question, Joy? One more time?
She wanted to know what's the pain that we feel, whether it's like the throwers doing like a max rep, or it's the pain of, I think, Kelly, this is what you're talking about, like when we're running a 400 and racing it, and we're running and all of a sudden our legs go, oh my God, but you got to just keep breathing.
Yeah, but that's the acidosis. That's the protons.
hydrogen. The answer is hydrogen ions is what's causing it. And the quick answer to that is that I like to break down my workouts into five times, which is 0 to 1 second, 1 to 7 seconds.
Hey, Megan.
Right? And then you got 7 to 15,
Yes.
15 to 40, and then 40 to about 120.
Yeah.
So
And that's all anaerobic.
Distance-wise, distance you're looking at, say 0 to 60 up to 7 seconds, and then from 7 to 15 seconds, that's like a 150 meter.
Right.
And then from there, 15 to 40, that's about 300, 350 for us. And then from there is special endurance, which is 40 seconds up. So the thing is, if at 40 seconds your body shuts down, a guy like Van Niekerk, he runs into 43, his last 3 seconds is in pain. But for me, if I run it in 55, at my age, my last 15 seconds are in pain. So,
but that's because he's continued developing his buffer system, maybe.
Yeah, but the thing is,
he's also in that time frame where that's what I said earlier. You run faster than 45 seconds, things don't hurt very long.
Yeah, exactly. So I think for us, it's all about volume and distance and your intensity. Sorry, volume and intensity. So if you're going to train, the higher the intensity, the faster the H+ ions are going to generate in your muscles.
Right.
And you're going to start feeling it. So I think when you start training, at least for track, I don't know about bodybuilding, I don't know about doing 15 reps or anything, but for track, watch your times. If you have your intensities down pat, look at your times and then look at your distances. And I guarantee 40 seconds is where you're going to shut down, and which is about 250, 275, I guess, for masters 400 meter runners.
But also with weightlifting, you're moving a load. So depending on the load itself, it can cause more contraction. You're bringing in more muscle fibers that are being fatigued quicker because they're moving against the load, which may be the reason why you're starting to build up more hydrogen ions in there. And weightlifting by far is an anaerobic workout itself. It's not an aerobic workout.
If you want to get a good test for track, do a 40-second test, and that's probably your best way to see where you are for running, say, the 400 or 300.
Then I might as well take up speed walking.
But Jimson, do you do a couple of those like in your workout to help you for a 400? What's your thing? Or do you want to?
Yeah, it depends on what I have, and it depends on time of the season, really. So early in the season, because there's no track meets, it's really hard now to train. It's really hard to train. But in a normal season, by the spring, I will do 3 sets, I'll say 450. And it depends what zone I'm working on.
Yeah,
right. If I do but if I'm doing 300, 350, I like keeping it under 40 seconds. So that's what I like to do in the early spring. But as the summer approaches, I'll drop it down to only 2 of them. So 2 times 300 or 2 times 350, and keep it that way. You just want to keep fresh. A big term they're using now is don't burn the steak, or don't overcook the meat. You've heard that everywhere. I've heard that in a lot of webinars lately. And you just don't want to. You want to stay fresh as possible. But you got to do the work.
Yeah.
As Anthony Bourdain said, don't murder the meat.
Yeah.
Don't murder the meat on the stove. Don't murder your body in training.
Yeah.
Jimson. Hey, Joy and Jimson.
Wait, Richie. Peter's got a question to ask. Peter, go.
I've got a question for Jimson then. So instead of thinking of distances in your training schedule, think of time.
Yeah, always. Too many coaches in Britain always train on time only. Sorry, distance only.
How far can I run? Did you hear that, Peter?
So what was the question? Yeah. I didn't hear the question because Alan interrupted.
Sorry.
Justin up, Peter. But back when the dinosaurs were still roaming the earth, with respect to Jimson, we actually worked on 42 seconds, but with 400 meter runners, men and women, 400 hurdlers, that was a big part of what we did all the time. And we would, it wasn't too easy, but when you were doing that on the track, we go to just really odd spots on the track so the athlete couldn't think too much about how far have I got each time. Sometimes we did it on real good grass, but then the other part that went with that was then we would do controlled work for that amount of time and then run for another 10 or 12 seconds as hard as you could to try to work on that buffer at the end.
So here's a question for you guys. I mean, I was a rower, and a big percentage of our time on it was spent building our aerobic system, like the baseline. And we would spend 8 months out of the year just doing a lot of long, slow distance. And I don't mean the drugs, LSD. But, and then our coach used to just basically say, okay, we've got 6 weeks to our first big 2K race. And that's when we brought in their speed work. And now I'm hearing from other people that they don't emphasize the aerobic system as much in their training. But could the aerobic system be the system that actually helps increase the buffer?
That's who you ask. I mean, if you go back 50 years ago to Arthur Lydiard from the 60s, he'll tell you it's all about aerobic. I mean, you know, Peter Snell did a marathon 2 months before his world record, 800 meters. And Peter Snell would be running 100 plus miles a week. Even Steve Ovett was running 80, 90, 100 miles a week. Those guys are doing a lot of mileage. So everyone's different, but yeah, I mean, some people think it's all aerobic, but in terms of rowing, I'll send something on a link here. So you guys talk. Give me 2 seconds here.
Yeah, Kelly. See, it's not just it's good conversations we're having here.
No,
It flipping is, yeah.
As Jimson's saying, especially in Britain, too many coaches still work on distance. So if you've got especially kids and a mixture of ages, abilities, girls and boys, say you're doing 140, 130 meter repetitions, that means half your squad are going to be training at level 2, and half your squad, because they're running slower, are going to be training in the third zone. So you get two different training effects out the same session. And the coaches will still say, oh, it's speed endurance. But for half your squad, it's pure endurance, and only half your squad are getting the training benefit. So you might as well set everybody up on time rather than distance. So everybody's running 15 seconds or 20 seconds or 24 seconds, whatever you want to do, rather than saying, right, we're doing 150s tonight.
Yeah,
you've got to try that.
No, time is good. I just don't like using time because I'm either coaching one certain age group or masters. So those for me. But if I was coaching youth, absolutely I would use time. I would use time as my base.
I tell you too about using the time, and Nico's, you talked about this, you know, you want to establish that rhythm, you want to establish the relaxation, and you know, kids have a hard time understanding that if you want to run really fast, it has to be relaxed. Even though you're firing full speed, everything is to be relaxed. So they tighten, they reach, they do all these things. They also see that line. They're doing 200s, they round the curve, they see that line, they try to push to reach there. They know they're supposed to get there in this amount of time. They know they got to get to there at that time. And so we've done this for several years with our sprinters and 400 meter runners and even hurdlers, without the hurdles, obviously, when they're trained. But and we've actually done it with hurdles in the place. We do like 20-second flies, 30-second flies. We do a test that we'll do like a 52-second run if we don't have a competition that week, you know, to kind of gauge where they are. But the because then they're really into that 52 seconds. It doesn't matter whether you're really fast or not, you're going to still be working hard for a long time after you get that point. But it takes away the notion of, I got to get to there, I got to push harder because I'm not going fast, and it lets them just relax and go fast. Well, how fast should we run? As fast as you can run and still be relaxed. Well, how far should we go? As far as you go by running relaxed and fast. Well, I mean, where should, and one of the coaches used to, like 5-6 years ago, he used to count down. He'd go 5, 4, yeah. I said, no, quit doing that. Well, I want them to know when they're stopping. I said, no, I want them not to know. Yeah. I want them to just keep running relaxed and not worry about anything except one thing. running fast and relaxed. The kids loved it. They still love it. And I had a kid, he was a pretty good 200-meter run anyway. He came through, and I learned this too. We started the 200 start line on the back straight, and he was at the 10-meter line for the, he went 190 meters in 20 seconds. And I'm like, oh, he ran 21:65.
Wow.
But that would have been faster literally than that. But
there it is.
we change where we run, because if you run a second one 8 minutes, 10 minutes later after full recovery, they're going to want to go where they went. Oh no, we're starting up here 30 meters ahead. Well, how do we know how far we go? Who cares how far you go? Run fast, run relaxed. It kind of frees them from worrying about anything else. And I think a lot of that mental part adds into the physical stress you feel. You know, you're kind of adding to it. And I obviously don't have any research for that, but I think there's a psychological impact on the physiological stress you get. And if you remove that psychological impact, it's probably easier to tolerate physiological stress, because they were in really fast. It's like I didn't even feel it.
Have a look at a cheetah when the cheetah is running. And the one thing you will notice that's just very fascinating is it is so relaxed that its spine acts as a spring system, which forces its hind legs to come almost in front of him or her, depending on what cheetah is. And when it grabs the actual, I didn't say pawing, but when it grabs the actual soil, it on each stride, it propels itself 25 feet forward.
Wow.
The other thing that a cheetah does, which is really interesting, is its paws, it always keeps them open. It doesn't do this with or its claws. It doesn't do this. It's always open. So when it lands on the ground, it's making sure that it's got the most surface area to grab the ground and move forward. But it's a very relaxed system. However, a cheetah can only go up to about 300, maybe 400 meters before it actually has to give up because of the hydrogen ions. Same thing.
I'm going to try, y'all keep going. I'm going to try to find something for you here.
I've actually got an image of the cheetah. See if I could bring that up.
Yeah.
It's an amazing, amazing, how do you say, something to see.
Yeah, so to answer all your questions about rowing, I attached the PDF, go to page 5, and you'll see exactly the zones that they like to train at. So I think what Nikos, you were training at is what they call the UT2 zone. That's the one that a lot of rowers go, 1 hour on the concept row on the off season. So
no, definitely. But if you look carefully, how much of their system, what we tried to do in the old days when we were training was I mean, this is 30, 40 years ago, but what we thought was that we wanted to keep pushing up the anaerobic threshold line. So let me see if I could draw this quickly.
Yeah, but that's the AC and AP at the very bottom 2 of the chart.
While you're doing that, I'm showing you my dog on the track.
Oh my God.
It's in high speed, but oh, you know what? Let me do this. Let me optimize it. I didn't do the optimizing.
See, Femi's missing out.
1,
Agreed.
2, 3, 4.
It's a little bit like what you're talking about.
Yeah, because you see how it brings the spine acts as a spring, and it almost like it curves it underneath.
And he's
grabs
opening his palms to the ground.
The tension is there when it flexes and opens.
I was watching in slow motion Usain Bolt's world record yesterday.
Actually, that's what we start off with. Yeah. Anyway, sorry, Joy.
No, it's okay. And you know how you're talking about how the undulating of the pelvis, this and that. And it was like that dog, everything. It wasn't very stiff and it was very ba-bum, ba-ba-ba. It was really cool to see that. And
this has the full speed and slow motion.
Look at you.
Well, if it comes on, I get bad service out here. Oh, come on.
Well, Richie, I can definitely tell you're in Texas because no other high school.
That's quick.
I know. We'd have a dog on the track.
And going the wrong way around.
Yeah, that was And that was, track coach geek. I measured his velocity, and he'd only had about 30 meters. So he really wasn't even at full speed, but I measured his velocity for marks on the track, and he was moving, and I can't remember what the velocity is.
Wow.
He was going basically in like an 11.6 or so. And this spring or summer, we were going to have him race one of the guys in 100, have somebody with the treat at one end and do it, and that canceled. But after about 100 meters, he's toast because of
IHP. But what I'm going to do next week is I'll bring that image of the cheetah, which is really neat to look at. But what we used to do in the old days when we were training is that so you looked at our whole system. Can you see this? And then if this was our aerobic system and we said it was 50%, so I'm going to put down 50% here. So this is in rowing. And that at 50%, we would hit our anaerobic threshold. What we tended to do in rowing is we wanted to actually move this line higher up to get to almost as close to about 15% from our max VO2. So a lot of our training was aerobic training to move the anaerobic threshold higher up. Now I'm wondering if that was because of the buffers. I don't know.
Threshold training, yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, it's getting hot out here on the porch. Y'all are welcome to stay on, but I did click record.
You run out of popcorn is what it is.
I ran out of popcorn. I need to go get some more tea.
So what's next topic? What's
thunderstorm roll through, and I had to go grab my flags off the house because we had a big thunderstorm. High winds.
So what's the next topic for next week? Should we go look at age in running or age in athletes?
How about we work out how to get Richie's dog to run a bit faster? 11.6 for 100 for a dog. It's 4-leg drive. Come on.
I'll tell you how to get him run faster. If I'd had a piece of meat at the other end of the track, he did that.
Oh yeah.
He is motivated by meat, and meat.
Well, I like vegan dogs.
No, this dog is not a vegan.
But anyways, what should we talk? Because we're actually got only 2 more. So Jimson and I were talking the other day about we were thinking of actually changing this onto more of a recovery regeneration format where we would bring in other topics. Like one thing that really fascinates me is zinc. Zinc and interestingly enough, I think 60 or 70% of the body's zinc is stored in muscle. And the older we get, we actually decrease the amount of zinc in our body, which may be another reason why we don't recover as quickly. So, but the thing is, should we, I'd like to continue these things because we've only got 2 more Wednesdays.
I can add them on at any time. Kind of
depends
on. And I also, let me check on something here.
Because I'd also like to invite other speakers, like anybody that you guys want to bring on, like, I don't know, Dan Pfaff would be a hard one to get, but,
I think what you're suggesting is kind of a logical extension of the way we've been going. So
yes,
that sounds like a good idea to me.
Because all of you guys, all of you people here have a lot of information, and I'd like to hear from you guys too. And
well,
I mean,
likewise, Joy, likewise.
I'd also like to know about reaction
times or reaction or
just reacted.
Yeah, like within the blocks, you know.
I couldn't answer that one.
Change the rule. They should change the rule, make it, because women's reaction time is slightly faster than men's. So the women's, they should really change the men's to 0.08 and the women's to 0.06.
Are you serious?
Yeah. There's an article I wrote about that in my blog years ago or decades ago.
See, we could have this whole thing on Jepson's website. Like, let's make this one information.
Oh, but I think if we actually delve into, the recesses of our brains, we can bring up some nice people to come and talk and give us on recovery regeneration, because that is the biggest field in sports right now. Yeah. The biggest untapped field in sports. All we know about from recovery regeneration is I mean, besides, I hate to say this, but besides my work with regards to stretching, I mean, prior to that, it was Angela Calder and hydration. And then the other big thing is sports psychology, but there's more to it. I mean, we're only skimming the surface, and I would love to put together a podcast, or not a podcast, but something like this specifically focused on recovery regeneration.
Okay.
But Richie, have you got any contact with Seagrave, or would you rather not go there?
You know, I saw something he's posting the meals they're making on Facebook.
Yeah, he's sitting at home not doing anything involved with athletics.
And, well, because he's not allowed to.
Yeah. I know, I understand. I don't want to go there.
So, yeah.
Oh, do tell, please.
No.
No, it's, no. It seems like, you got, what's his name in Canada? Andy in Canada, and Laura.
Andy
and
who?
interestingly enough, who were together raising hell with the staff years ago.
Andy Higgins?
No,
no.
Andy McGinnis.
Oh, McGinnis. Oh, yeah.
But I could talk to Dan.
Yeah,
that would be good. Or even, I mean,
Dan on recovery.
Yeah, it'd be good to hear him, because he does that Eldoa stuff.
Yeah.
You know? But I would love to be able to continue something like this where we could just there's a lot of topics we can talk about.
I'm due to get Victor Conte on a call one day. We're still scheduled to have a call, so that'll be interesting, talking about ZMA, zinc, magnesium.
His DMAP.
Yeah, I might miss that one.
You guys.
Come on, Malcolm, keep an open eye. Kelly, you're probably going, what the hell are these guys talking
You have to have
about?
people, or I'm not going to hang out with you.
You have
right,
to be
Kelly?
open-minded.
Come on.
Let's maybe work or email each other and figure something, and then I got to get going.
Okay, yeah, I got to go too.
Yeah.
I have to
Same
go
here,
check my
but then
neighbor's
we
pool,
can-
make sure the temperature is good.
And then we should figure out if this time still works well for everybody. If not, another day or something that actually will give us and invite more people.
Well, I'll tell you one thing I could do next week too, if we're at a lack of stuff, is I can talk about what we're trying to set up as a workshop in Puerto Rico, and I can pull up the website and show some stuff about the albergue, but I'll know more from Victor by then. Yeah. We've got Vince Anderson on board to go down there, a really good hurdles coach there, Hector Emil, the Guzman, who coaches those 2 half-milers who are really good, and then Nikos is going to do something on microstretching if we could pull this whole thing off. So,
but what we're what we're really wanting to do down there is, Joy, you might be interested, in your group might be interested, is actually we're trying to turn albergue into a destination center for training.
I've already talked to some of my master's friends to do this.
No, because this is what we want to do. And I mean, I've found 2 investors that are willing to put money towards the recovery regeneration center.
Oh, yeah, no, I've already told my friends we got to go down there, because I know they've had a master's meets down there, or they were trying to do something.
Not at the albergue, they haven't, but they're redoing the track, and they may start having meets there again.
Well,
they had it in Carolina, and that track has holes in it right now. So
I'll bring Kelly over
and go down and check it out down there.
Yeah.
I think it's great. Good.
All right, I will email around, and I'll talk to you all next week. But email around if somebody has got it somewhere.
Thanks, Richie.
Okay, bye guys.
Thanks, everyone.
Good Saturday. All right.
Oh, Nikos.
Yo.
I just sent it quickly because I didn't know whether it would send or not. But I just did a small bit of reading, and apparently,
look at this.
At the end of myelinated and unmyelinated fibers, at the end of them is nociceptive or pain fibers, and their endings they're sensitive to inflammatory cytokines such as bradykinin, histamine, and serotonin.
Serotonin's very interesting, yeah.
And it says that the
Hey Kelly, sorry to interrupt. If you can email him that, or Nico's cut and paste it, or because I gotta.
Oh, you can leave Kelly and I.
No, if I end the meeting, everybody's off.
Oh, you don't have to end the meeting. You can.
Well, then the recording goes on forever. So.
Right, I've just pasted.
I'll just get on in a few minutes. Okay, I'll just leave and get on in a few minutes.
Okay.
Cool.
Oh, what did you just do right now? Oh, you pasted the whole article.
You, the host, so you
Yeah.
can turn it off and that'll stop.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, it says that you can buffer the. Oh, hang on, sorry, just reading it now. You can like buffer the what do you call it? Like the threshold at which the nociceptors excite.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it has nothing to do with for the H plus then.
Oh yes, it says yes.
It has to. Yeah.
Yeah.
And serotonin is a very interesting topic. You should pick on serotonin because serotonin is an inflammatory enhancer.
Right.
Yeah, and this is what we're looking at. And I'm glad. Oh, Alan's still here. He'll probably arrest me, but this is what we're looking at from psychedelics.
I'm just taking notes on that each week.
Yeah, exactly. No, but the interesting thing about it is that the psychedelics work on the serotonin itself as they become an inhibitor of serotonin, which actually diminishes inflammation. And this is why a lot of people that actually are depressed, they start looking towards taking psychedelic drugs because they diminish the inflammation in the brain, which then diminishes depression, which is huge. Yeah, huge. But I didn't know that it's actually at the nociceptors, which is great.
Yeah, that's
Well
really.
done.
I mean, I'll have to do some more reading.
Well, maybe you should present next week.
Way annoyingly, I'm actually doing a spinal manipulation course next week. So I'll be reading for that.
Oh, okay. But it would be great.
But I'll read and send a few articles over.
Sounds great. And and then get onto with your Nathan and get those guys back on. I know what's happened to Femi. This has been great that you've come on board, which we really enjoy.
I'm so grateful. Yeah, thank you.
And then Tim's got to get some of his coaches up onto this as well.
I've got some good guys I think I might be able to pull in if you guys let me know what you want to, but they're more track and field guys. So it'll be more like throwing or probably not as science-based.
Well, it doesn't have to be science-based because, I mean, before there was scientists, there was good coaches.
Yeah.
And the coaches did everything. And This is the bottom line. And this is the one thing that I've often said, a good coach was the massage therapist, was the scientist, was the statistician, and then you brought in the scientists.
It's interesting because the head coach of Princeton University, his name is Fred Samara.
Uh-huh.
And he actually was in charge of the U.S. decathletes for many, many years and was, I guess, co-coach with the guy you had on like 2 weeks ago.
Co-coach. Oh, you mean the guy who what's his name? Kevin.
The decathlete coach.
Yeah, Kevin. Yeah. No,
So,
definitely.
And he lives around the corner from me. He's my son's coach right now, and he might be somebody that I could talk to. He's probably never done a Zoom call. And
I'll bring him over to your place.
Yeah, so I'll invite him over. So let me see. I'll talk to Richie and see if I can line him up. He'd be good. Yeah. Just to pick his brain for half an hour.
Well, I mean, this is what I want to do with this thing is I just want to be able to pick people's brains for half an hour. And I tried to basically sort of have these little, how do you say, PowerPoint presentations just so we could sort of have a basis to talk about something. But it's, there's a lot of good minds on this Zoom call, and everybody's got their own opinion and everybody's got a different way of doing things, which is great. I just want to know who Dwayne Johnson is. He hasn't shown himself.
He's muted anyway at the moment, I think.
Okay.
There's a few of them who haven't realized they're muted.
Okay. But anyways, so Kelly, we won't see you next week, correct?
I'll let you know. I'm going to be in London.
Whereabouts?
Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Well, me being a northerner, I pronounce it Marylebone, but apparently it's Marylebone.
Marylebone.
Yeah.
Whereabouts are you from England?
It's Marylebone.
Marylebone, yeah.
Oh, is
Yeah.
it Marylebone?
Marylebone, yeah.
Okay.
Marylebone is
Come on, guys. Listen, hey, Tim,
Yeah.
Tim, ready for this? I'm going to spell a word and you have to pronounce it.
Oh God.
Okay, ready?
Yeah.
D
Yeah.
E R B Y.
Oh, here we go.
Huh?
Derby.
No, Darby. Don't tell
Darby.
me how the hell they
Darby.
get Darby a Derby.
See, in New Jersey, we say water instead of water, and we say wash, but in the Midwest, they say whoosh and water, and we say water instead of water.
And Northerners from England say water.
Where are you
Oh.
nuts? Oh, okay. I love the Northerners. They're good. But the
From
Scottish people,
Doncaster.
Doncaster. The Scottish people ruled, of course.
The friendliest of them all.
Well, you know, I mean, you got to hand it to a nation that looked to a spider to determine their basic outcome on their battle with England. I think that says a lot right there.
They always look to nature for the answers.
Well, that's right. You know the story about the spider there, Tim?
No, I do not.
Well, what's his name? De Bruce?
Robert the Bruce, yeah.
Robert de Bruce. Oh, I should let the
After
Scottish
first
man
battle
say
where
it.
he was defeated, he went and hid in a cave and was wondering what to do, and he saw the spider at least 8 times come down the web he spun, broke it, climbed up again, came down, broke it, climbed up again, and on the 8th attempt he was successful. So Robert the Bruce basically went, I'll try again. It's as simple as that. It's just to keep trying.
Now, Alan, have you ever been to Elgin before?
Yes.
So I was there last summer. I loved it.
Why?
Why? Yes. So in 1698, my relative was given permission to, when we have the written on parchment still, to leave Scotland to come to America.
Right.
So he was a member of, I don't know, whatever it was. He was buried in the cathedral thing there. So anyway, it was just neat. So we've always wanted to go, and my mom, it's my mom's side of the family, and so she said this is what she wanted to do. So she brought the grandchildren, and we all went and found his grave and did a little research. But a lot of fun.
What's your mum's maiden name?
Well, it was Mills, and then before that it was I'll have to go look, but that was the one of the family names, but that was not one that was from Elgin. I'll have to go look.
No, that's what I was asking now.
Yeah.
Because my grands are from up there as well. My grands are Donaldson, and that's from up that area.
Okay.
Just to see. Sorry, that's irrelevant.
Yeah.
But anyways, no, this is great. This is what I like about it. I like keeping this very informal because it's good conversations and, you know.
Yeah.
But anyhow, so next week, we'll see what Rich comes up with. If not, I just might look at age, because age is an inflammatory response, and we'll take it from there.
Excellent.
Yep.
Excellent.
Okay. Keep well, guys.
We'll talk to you soon. Yep. We'll see you next
Take care.
week.
Bye now.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye. Bye. Bye.